Hello, friends. Welcome back to another episode. Today, we have a very exciting guest. Exciting guest? Yes.
Yo.
We have an exciting guest. As you can see on the smile on my face, we have someone, probably one of the greatest piano players I personally know. We have he was a fellow youth leader of mine. Now he has moved on to bigger and better things.
I love this intro.
Honestly, I love him to bits, and it's been a pleasure, I guess, getting to know him more and more as the time has gone by. Only a year so far.
Mm-hmm. Only a year.
I know, it's wild.
Wowee.
Everyone, please welcome Stephen. Don't want to clap too loud. Welcome.
Yo, thank you so much. I'm very excited to be here.
It's exciting to have you. So we just came back from church.
Mm-hmm.
My throat, because I've done a lot of talking, might not be the best, but we shall see how
I feel like after church in general, we've been yelling for like 4 hours at lunch, and we're all a little bit fried.
Yeah, so we'll see.
It is what it is.
I have my tea, my special tea.
Yes. What are you drinking?
I don't know.
Don't know.
It's just random herbs that my cousin
All right.
made.
I'm here for it. I'm drinking, just so the viewers know, a chamomile and spearmint. So very interesting concoction today.
Love that. Okay, so to start off, I would love to hear. Obviously, I know you, but I feel like maybe some people don't know you. So I would love to hear about you, who you are, what you do, anything you find interesting about yourself.
Anything I find interesting about myself? Well, I don't even know how to answer this question. My goodness. I am a human.
Oh boy.
Okay. About myself. Look, I am a 26-year-old person. I am a boy. I am a believing believer, which means I'm believing in God. I believe in Jesus. I believe in his word, being the Bible. And I love the church. I'm passionate about the church and all sorts of ministries. And, more recently, I would say almost a new passion that I feel God has ignited in my life has been a real passion for discipling people. So that's like the most recent description of where I'm sort of at in life is obviously working full time, church and family and all of that is what my life sort of revolves around.
Do you want to mention what you do for work at all?
I work in HR. So that's pretty much what I do for work. What HR is, I couldn't tell you.
Fair enough. You said you were 26, right?
Yes.
I mentioned that he didn't mention it. Wait, did you? Piano playing?
I do play the piano.
Yeah, he's very good at piano.
Yeah. It's funny. I don't even think of myself
as a piano player.
Yeah, like it's a very foreign experience for me. Also, I'm not going to say that, but it is a bit weird that I play the piano.
What do you mean? Why is it weird?
I don't know. I feel like people think I am a piano player. I don't think of myself as a piano player. Like it's just something that
You're an artiste.
I'm an artist. I am. But yeah, I guess a lot of people think that's like my biggest thing, which, okay, like that's cool.
I think because you do that every Sunday.
People
Friday.
see it a lot, which is cool. Yeah. But there's a lot more to me than the piano player.
Really? I just thought it was Stephen the piano player. I didn't know there was more. Yeah, I guess, that's not everything, obviously, but...
Okay, so if I was to ask you this question, how would you answer it? Like if I said, who are you? Or like, tell me about yourself. Like, what's the first thing that you would say?
Well, everyone knows me, but I'd say I'm Jonah, 23. I like football. I like being a nerd. I like Pokemon.
We like Pokemon.
Marvel. And it's the standard stuff.
Okay.
And then the whole Christianity thing, but we'll get into that.
Okay.
For you guys.
Yep.
But yeah, that was a good insight. It's funny because why is it the hardest question to
I don't know. I feel like I'm in a job interview and I'm very nervous.
That's literally what Sarah said. The first guest we had on said that.
Yes.
So we're gonna talk about your testimony a little bit.
Let's do it.
I say this to every guest, and I'm sure the viewers have heard this enough, and they'll continue to hear it. But you can either start from birth. I don't know. Like I started from birth. I don't know if you heard mine. I started from birth. You can start from yesterday. Start from whenever you want. You can go in as much detail as you like.
Alrighty.
Go as little detail as you like. But we'll make it happen.
So, I think my life journey began sort of quite a big family. I'm the youngest of probably 16 grandkids the youngest boy, of 16 grandkids on my dad's side. Most of my mum's family are in America.
I actually didn't know that. What the heck? Wow. Because the people I know, you're one of the oldest.
I am. It's funny. Like God just gave the Oases many girls after me.
That's a funny yeah, sorry.
But basically sort of grew up very much a church kid. So went through Sunday school, went through youth group. And like I remember as a kid, I didn't really love church. I think like in hindsight, there were definitely bits of church that I loved, but I remember feeling like I just hated waking up in the morning. And Sunday school taught by my amazing Auntie Elaine. Got into youth group after that, and always just sort of, this is very unusual. But yeah, always just in church. Like my whole life, I've just been in that church community. So I would probably say, though I had sort of knowledge about who God was and who Jesus was, it took quite a while for me to really grasp a relationship with him. I would say when I was in year 9, I remember experiencing the joy. So would have been 14 when I was in year 9. And I remember experiencing like the joy of the Lord for the first time. And I remember reading God's word and reading little verses and feeling God speak to me when I was in year 9. And that was like a very new thing for me, because I'd done so many Christian things and I was already in ministry. Like from the time I was in year 7, I was playing the keys. But I had a little glimpse of relationship with God in year 9. Whether or not I was saved, it's like I cannot pinpoint it, as a lot of church kids cannot. But I felt, and this is where we can probably get a bit deeper. I'm the youngest of 3 kids. So I've got my oldest sister, Alana, and then middle child, Dan. We love Dan. And then me. And growing up, they were such good Christian kids. Like Alana was just the dream daughter. Like she was just like adored at church, and she was such a respected like godly girl, and she was not in any way rebellious, and she wasn't, I don't know, there's something very unique about Alana and her faith. And I think the Bible, like it talks it, like if you read Ecclesiastes, it talks about how is it Solomon who wrote Ecclesiastes? Yeah. And he said, remember God in the days of your youth. And I think more often than not, people don't. And they will, like in their youth or in their teenage years, they'll often go into the world or go into whatever it is. And for a very small handful of people who do not go into the world, but actually delve into like God and the life that he has for them, there's a very special blessing on those people. So I had my sister Alana. She was, like just such a good girl. And then my brother, who was also like a very good sort of like Christian kid as well. And I always felt as the youngest, and I'm curious to know if you felt this way as well, but I didn't want to be like them. And I always felt like I was and I still am quite a competitive kid, where if like, and that's how I learned piano actually. Like Alana started first, and she was learning chords in her room. And when she was gone, I would go in and I wanted to play better than her. So I always wanted to do things different. I never wanted to just follow the same footsteps because of them. And I felt that around that year 9, year 10 mark, like, because I experienced the joy of the Lord then for a very short time. And then after that came this, like, my eyes were slowly being opened to the world and everything in this world, like everything, all the fun and all of the sin and all of the things that I had never learnt about, all the things I'd never thought about, or, you know, like things you don't learn about in church, things you don't, like we didn't speak about at home. And it was, these were just things that I was super just keen to just, it started off quite slowly, like, oh my gosh, like, I don't know how detailed to get here, but like, I don't know, it could be like smoking, for example, or drinking. And I would just be really curious about it. And then I would start like talking about it at school. And then eventually it would be talking about like, oh, do you know people who do smoke? And then from then it just progressed and progressed until I was actually trying those things myself. Yeah. So I don't know, was that the same experience for you when you looked at your older, because you got one sister, 2 older brothers, but being the youngest, did you feel this sense of like, I want to do things differently?
Oof, I actually don't think so. It's very odd. Okay. I guess I think as me and Anthony, so me and the brother that's older than me, the first person I was on the podcast, we both just learnt from like our parents, from our older siblings. We learnt from their mistakes, and we took the good, and obviously we took some bad, but most of the bad we
mistakes,
parents and older siblings, and same with Anthony. Okay. Like I learned from his mistakes, and obviously I still make a bunch of mistakes, and like I do have similarities to them, like the negative parts. But most of the mistakes, I think me and Anthony sort of filtered out pretty well.
Wow.
Which is
that's great.
Yeah, by God's
See, in my family, like Alana never made mistakes. Like,
yeah, okay.
And I don't know, it was very different. Like
that's interesting. But there was a part of me that if I got compared to my siblings, especially at school, would just be like, no, actually not.
Okay, so what was that like? Tell me, in school, you would have had teachers who taught your older brother, your older sister, your other older brother, and then they teach you. Did they look at you and go, oh my gosh, you're Jeanette's little brother? Or was it like, oh, like what was that?
So for me, it was so weird because Jeanette, like, she was smart, she was good, all these things. Okay. Roger, so the second eldest, he took all the like Jeanette was so good. How are you like this? Because he was I'm not gonna say dumb kid, but he was someone that didn't care, like one of those kids. And then so I think he took all of that, and then Anthony was like,
he gives me good kid vibes.
He was he was a really good kid. He was smart. He, like did work. And then there was me. Okay. Where like I think I had intelligence. I say had intelligence. I just didn't care at all. So it was a weird dynamic because some teachers knew like my sister, my brother, both my brothers. Some only knew Anthony. So sometimes it wasn't even at school. It was like at home, it hurt even more. Like whenever I'd get compared to my siblings. So I'm like, man, I'm not them. Like, leave me alone. But yeah, like that wasn't really like a part of me that stung too much. Okay. I do remember sometimes it would be like, don't compare me to
Who did you get compared to the most?
So I think I was most similar to Roger, but I would get compared most to Anthony
because of age.
Because he's the closest to me. We always had these things. We have smart, dumb.
Me too. Alana, Dan, me. Like, Dan, we love you.
That's funny. Like the thing is, me and Roger, like, we're not really. I don't know.
I beg to differ. Look, I don't know Roger very well, but you're a bright cookie, I think.
Look, I just didn't care. Like,
Okay, like academically.
yeah, academically,
Okay,
I just didn't
interesting.
care. Like studying, forget about it.
Okay.
The thing is, there was one test I remember, one exam I I studied on. I got worse on that exam than I ever did. So I was like, what's the point of studying? So after that, I was like, I'm not studying anymore. Like, what the heck? So that was
How
my
interesting.
but yeah, I couldn't care less. Like,
So for me, I had, I didn't, because I was a bit of a wanting to do life differently to my sister and my brother. I actually went to a different school to them for most of my like 13 years.
okay.
So, and I was the spoilt one. Like we grew up going to public schools, and then I basically complained to my dad so much that he put me in a private Catholic school, and then I went to a public high school, and then went back to the Catholic system. And I remember, like, yeah, my sister would just drop comments about how spoilt I was about all of that. But anyways, it's interesting. When I was in the public high school in year 7. I had not only Alana and Dan, but I had Julian and Laith, my other older cousins. And every teacher had taught at least one of my family members. And so if I was going to get, oh, I love your sister, Alana, it was the best, possible best scenario, because I always was going to get some extra favor with that teacher because of Alana. I don't think Dan was overly bad or overly good, but then I would often get, like, if I remember probably once or twice a teacher would be like, oh, you're Laith's cousin, because we all have the same last name, and like Laith was a, you know, he was a little bit of a troublemaker at school, but anyways, I had a bit of interesting family dynamics. I definitely was a competitive kid, and I still am quite competitive, but hopefully in a different way. And yeah, growing up, I definitely did not want to be that same good Christian girl or boy that my sister and my brother were. And also, I don't know if you remember, but back in those days, we were living in a culturally Christian time where the norm was Christianity. The norm was church going. I remember like going to, this is a core primary school memory, when I first went to a Catholic school. And obviously, like growing up in a Baptist church, I wasn't baptized as a baby. I didn't receive Holy Communion or anything like that. And I remember one of my classmates said to me, oh, like, have you had your Holy Communion? I said, like, what do you mean? She's like, what do you mean you haven't had your Holy Communion? And then she goes, have you been baptized? I was like, no, I haven't. And I hadn't taken any of the sacraments. And like, I was laughed at because of that. It's like, I didn't fit in because I wasn't religious enough in year 5. And so, but obviously now it's a very different age. But I think, yeah, back then everyone was Christian, everyone and their parents went to church. And I think I just sort of felt like, no, I don't want to just do that for the sake of doing that. Like I want to do me. I want to figure life out my own way. And I would say year 10, when I was 15 years old, I definitely really went into the world. And I was having a lot of fun in the world. It was very short-lived. It wasn't
10 to 15.
No. In year 10, when I was 15 years old. 10 to 15. And that sort of continued throughout year 11 as well. And then I remember, so one of the things that was really important to me in high school, and it's funny, I haven't thought about this in a long time, but was doing well in school. And I was doing terrible in school for most of high school. But I had this like fear of year 12, and I had this fear of getting a bad HSC mark, and you know, what's going to happen after year 12. I didn't want to be like, I knew I had potential. Like I think I could do well in school if I put my mind to it. But like, I don't know, from year 8 to year 11, I really was just flopping. And then year 11 started, and I'm like, okay, I've officially dropped geography, I've dropped history, I've dropped all the subjects that don't matter. I've just got the subjects I want, which were all like the business subjects and whatever. And I thought, I've got to, like, this is what counts now. I want to put my mind into this and I actually want to do well. And I picked all the subjects that I wanted, and I was actually doing really badly in school. And I was also, at the same time, while I was doing really badly in school, enjoying the world.
Right. They correlate together?
100%.
Yeah.
They totally correlated together.
Yeah.
And I think that, but like basically I knew that in order for me to, it's weird. I had this faith as a 16-year-old kid that God had what I wanted, not necessarily what I needed, because I needed Him more than anything. But I wanted a good HSC mark. I wanted a good ATAR, right?
Yeah.
And I wasn't going to get it my own way, and so I remember like my year 11 final for English, I think I got 22%. Like I was at the very end of my,
were you still putting in effort or?
No, at that point I wasn't listening. Like I hadn't memorized my quotes like for the exam, and I just like totally flopped it. There was nothing I could say like in the exam. And you just like, there's nothing worse than like sitting in an exam where you actually just don't know anything. But anyways, I finished year 11, and I remember thinking, okay, I'm about to start year 12 now. This is what counts. I'm not proud of much in my life. Like I'm not proud of how well I'm doing at school. I'm not proud of, I don't know, like the direction my life is going in. And I also had a lot of worldly ambition at the time. So what was your dream job as a kid, Jonah?
Football player.
Okay, so my dream job when I was 16 years old was to be a bartender.
Okay.
So I had a whole bartending era. I was like going on YouTube, like how to make a margarita, and like at the time, like, I don't know, my mum was on board with it. So like she bought me like a little cocktail making kit, and I was like making margaritas at home.
That's so funny. Wow. It's funny because there's another world where I can see you bartending.
I basically like, the whole clubbing scene was so big when I was in high school, and it was like the second anyone would turn 18, they go to the city. That's and they just go clubbing.
You were at the Catholic.
Yeah, I was at the Catholic school.
Oh, okay.
And so I had this whole bartending phase, and like I remember loving house music. And this is an example of where me and my sister would clash, where we'd be in the car and I'm wanting to listen to like some good like G-up music. Like I'm wanting to listen to like some good, I don't know, just vibey. Yeah, give me like some good, you know what I'm saying? Like, anyways, so she was playing the most annoying, like, no offense to anyone who likes this music, but like country Christian, like, I feel like you like this stuff, Joe. Like For King and Country and Third Day and all of these bands
What was the first one you said?
King and Country, For King and Country.
I've heard them. I don't know.
Couldn't tell you what they sing, but they're probably great. I'm sorry if people like them, but you know, it wasn't just the music. Like the songs aren't that bad, but because my sister liked them, I instantly didn't like them. Like I remember there was like one or two that like I low key liked, but I just was too proud to admit it. So yeah, just as an example, like one of my ambitions was when I get my license, I'm going to listen to music loud, because Alana was so like, she's just so good in the car, and the volume would always be so reasonable. And like, it was just annoying. Like, no, like let's listen to some good music. So I had that ambition for sure. And I definitely was like planning to turn 18, like go to the city with some friends, like enjoy that scene. And then I had it in the back of my mind that, you know, like all the other boys that I had grown up watching, late in my 20s, I'm going to come back to church and I'm going to find a really good Christian girl and I'm going to get married. So anyways, whilst this is happening, I'm like flopping my grades in school. And then, we had a youth camp, and the youth camp was, the theme of the youth camp was fan or follower. So the whole idea being, would you call yourself a fan of Jesus or would you call yourself a follower of Jesus? And I couldn't, like, this is a camp from 2013. I was 16 years old. Okay. And I remember just feeling so much pressure to to succeed in school, and I knew I couldn't do it on my own, but I also felt really far from God, and I felt I really lacked joy. And though I despised like parts of my sister, I could see she had real joy. And deep down, I was jealous of that, because beyond like the good Christian girl that she was and all the respect she had, she was actually happy, and she was like, she had a purpose in life, and I was jealous of that.
When you say happy, let's say something bad happened. I don't know, like
Death?
no, like just in her life. Let's say, I don't know, she got teased or something happened that she didn't like. Was she still in school at this time? Probably not.
No, so she's 5 years older than me, so she would have been in uni when I was.
Let's say like she was just struggling with something during that time. She wouldn't necessarily be happy, but did you still sense that joy even in those moments?
It's funny. I don't really. So it's interesting. Like I don't remember seeing Alana struggle much growing up.
Right.
And I remember feeling maybe that was part of it. I felt I couldn't relate to her because I felt her life was perfect, though it definitely wasn't. And I know she had struggles, but to me, I didn't really see her struggling with much. I remember she would spend a lot of time in her room with her Bible open. And yeah, like I remember like I was that sibling, and honestly I still am this sibling where I will walk into your room and just stand there and I'll just annoy you. And now that she's like married with kids, like I'll just do that to my brother. Like he'll just be, I don't know, just come home from work, I'll walk into his room and just stand there.
You won't say anything, just stand there?
I'll stand there, like I'll sing, I'll do something dumb, and then I'll walk out. So
like a cat.
Pretty much. So I don't really remember seeing Alana go through anything like drastic. And one thing about my family is we always struggle in private. So we don't show people. And this is something I'm trying to unlearn very, seriously, is that I just pretend like we're major internalizers, and we sweep a lot of our feelings under the rug, and we sweep a lot of real issues under the rug, and we'll sort of ignore the elephant in the room. And we're not expressive people either. So when there is an issue, it's easier not to talk about it. Therefore, we won't talk about it. And I feel that hasn't worked well for me in my friendships.
I don't think it will work well for anyone, to be honest.
It doesn't. And people like Bobby and Simon have really challenged me to see that there is wisdom in showing people your emotions and showing people what upsets you. But for me, it's actually, there's a root of pride in it, because it's like, no, nothing hurts me. I'm so thick-skinned, and I don't know. It's like, I like there's nothing you can say that's going to bother me, when in fact I'm actually quite a sensitive person. So
that's interesting. Sorry, I'm going to pause you there. They're interesting that you say that, because my family very similar. Like, I mean, anything that happened to me probably till like the age of maybe 20, I don't know, I would just keep to myself. I wouldn't care. Like, just like I can deal with it on my own. Like, I don't know. I just want to say anything to anyone, even like showing affection. Like, the thing is, you'll see my family, like they all love each other, they're all close to each other, right? But there's not much affection. There's a lot more now, but before there was no like affection, and we wouldn't hug each other. There was no like none of that. I mean, me and my siblings still don't hug. Like, the only person I hug is probably my mom. There's no affection. So coming out of that and unlearning, like you said, unlearning these things where like showing no affection, and it's not like for me, it wasn't like you look at it, it's not a bad thing, because my family's all close and we all love each other, whatever. But when outside of the family, when I have, let's say I get a girlfriend, like I need to show them affection.
True.
I need to show my emotions.
You gotta show her when she upsets you.
Yeah, stuff like that. 100%. And I'm like,
yeah,
we all are just bottled up. And in my life, I think there was just a moment that switched, and I was like, why am I hiding all of this? And I think I may have become the extreme opposite.
Oh, really? How interesting. That's so true. Because you are someone, from when I first sort of met you and connected with you, where you had this real sense of, it is realness. Like you wouldn't pretend to be perfect, or you wouldn't pretend not to have struggles. And that was very refreshing for me, because growing up, like the Christian boys that I had sort of around me, I couldn't relate to. And I'd never really hear them talk about real issues. And when they talk about sin and temptation, it would be like, hanging out with the wrong people and swearing. And it wasn't real things that, yes, those are real things. But for me, that wasn't the real stuff. And I remember when I met you and you were telling me about things that, in terms of temptation that we all struggle with, I was like very... to be honest, I was a bit confronted by it, but then I was actually very refreshed by it. And till this day, I've never been more open as a person about my struggles than I am now. And I actually credit people like you for that.
I remember one of the first men's Bible study I went to, I was genuinely new to the church. I just opened, I didn't necessarily open up about myself, but I actually did. I just said, lads, let's say I've been struggling with this thing, and then all the boys, you can sort of feel
literally
in the room,
literally,
and it's just everyone was thinking about the same thing, but because everyone's sort of maybe ashamed or whatever too, and that was me. And the truth is, back in my in my old church, I had that. I put that persona on myself where I was perfect and I did nothing wrong or whatever it was to my youth, to members, whatever it was. The pressure that has on you is going to break you. That's not it's not a pressure that will make a diamond, because that's not it's not the truth. The only pressure that's going to break you is the truth. So I said you listen to Sarah's podcast, right? Yeah. So in that one I say there was a time where I felt undeserving. That's the truth. So there was a lot of pressure on that, but that actually came out refined. But something like a lie, I'm showing perfection, and the fakeness that I was showing.
We are not perfect.
Yeah, the pressure that was putting on me, that's just going to break me. There's no diamond coming out of that.
Yes.
So it was actually when I was at Word of Life where I opened up after that with my close friends. I was like, lads, I keep saying lads, but I was like, there's some issues that we need to deal with, and pride, lust, the things that men struggle with. These are a bunch of mates of mine. I was like, bro, we need to sort this out. And I've been hiding for so long, but it's time. And I think there was a time period where I saw so much growth in the people around me, just because this one dumb child was brave enough to actually talk about themselves.
100%.
So I love seeing that from you. Again, I think I might be a bit too extreme, but
but you know what? To be honest, the extremity provides a safety net for me. If you've shared this much, I'm comfortable to share this much.
Yeah, okay.
Whereas if you started sharing this much, I would share even less. So I think for someone like me who's quite private about what is actually bothering me and what I'm struggling with, it's very refreshing. And it is that relief when I've got people around me who are open about their struggles, because it just means I can be safe to be as honest about myself. Because clearly I am also a human who has struggles and who has evil desires and who has a lot of sin in my life and sinful thoughts and sinful words and sinful things that I do that do not please God. And so being around people who are equally aware of their sin and unafraid to talk about their humanity in that way is very refreshing.
Because it brings out a thing of this is who I am. This is what God has saved me from. Sometimes I tap into it and my flesh shows, but God has actually saved me from this, and I might still struggle, whatever. But I mean, if you speak to me about your struggle or whatever it is, pride, and then you turn around and you show humility. I'll be like, man, he's struggling with pride, but he's showing so much humility at this time. I'm struggling with pride. Maybe I can actually conquer this pride. And like, yeah, I think this is actually one of the reasons, I don't think I said this, but one of the reasons I wanted to start the podcast is to allow people to talk about themselves. As shallow as that sounds, it's like people need to express themselves, because like you sharing this can affect anyone. It's I didn't know a lot about like everything you've said so far. I know you haven't really gone like extremely deep into what you've shared, but there's stuff that I didn't know about you. Stuff that's like pretty cool. I didn't know you went to a Catholic church and
Catholic school.
Sorry, school. Yeah, there was a lot like, and like, this is really cool.
It is cool. I think going back to your family and like, I suppose that whole, like, it's like a personality thing of we just don't express ourselves and we don't talk about the elephant in the room. And maybe it's also like a response. It's like a defense thing of protecting ourselves where we just keep it inside. Because bringing it out is risky. But I think I've had really good chats with your mum, and I love Lordy, and her parenting style is very also refreshing. And she's told me about how she was very open with you guys, and she would know details about what you guys were going through throughout your high school life. Whereas in my house, like all 5 people in my family are very much like
separate
in our rooms, or like if we're together, we're just watching TV. Like we don't actually know what's going on in each other's lives.
Sorry, I would say my mom was probably. Actually, I can't remember, but I think my mom was like
the catalyst.
She was the one person that like. She was linked to everyone.
Okay. Okay. So it was only her. It wasn't you siblings talking with each other. Did you know what Anthony was going through? Did you know what Jeanette was going through? I don't think so. Especially as the youngest, you're always curious. Like, what are they up to? Like, I feel like Alana has an issue with this person at church. I wonder what that is. Like that, or like same thing with Dan or an older cousin. I always felt a little bit out of the loop with those things.
Like the only time I would sort of know about, like, I'm trying to think back now, like I don't know what they struggle with at school or whatever it is. The only time I would know is like if they're talking in the car on the way to church or something. Like that's the only time like Janelle will be talking about a situation to mom. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Like I've got memories. I feel like I'm really exposing my family, but I'm sorry. But it's like, I don't know, when someone in the family is crying, it's like, oh my gosh, what's happening? Something's gone wrong. And no one would be in the room with them while they were crying, except maybe my dad would be there or maybe my mum would be there. So yeah, I feel like my whole family are quite private people. And I actually think there's definitely an extreme, but there is also an element of wisdom in not just showing everything you feel and saying everything that you think, and just giving everything away so freely to people who aren't going to understand you or who might misinterpret you. So yeah, I probably lean more on that extreme side, and I'm trying to just, it's funny, a lot of people around me are very open and very expressive, and I just feel, I'm just slowly getting pulled in that direction. But anyways, this sort of started when you asked me about when I would see, did I ever see my sister go through a trial or anything like that, and how would she respond given the fact she was a strong,
how do we get to
strong believer? Major tangent, but no, I never really saw her like really struggle, or maybe I never really knew about it. But I felt like I was struggling when I was 16 in school. Went to this church camp, which was a very poignant topic because I knew a fan basically just is going with the ride to get something out of it. Like a fan shows up to a game for entertainment. A follower, it costs them something. So I was, my whole mentality on walking with God was that God existed for my benefit and for my enjoyment of life, not the other way around, like for me to bring pleasure to God and for me to serve him. So that camp sort of flipped my whole life. And that was when I made a decision to follow Christ. And that was when I also made a decision to be baptized. And maybe 4 months later, I was baptized. But I remember life did change pretty quickly from then, like even in school. Like I remember because I cared so much about doing well in Year 12. And I felt that was such a thing that was going to identify me afterwards, is how well I did in high school. And it it's an ongoing joke that my ATAR still defines me, but I genuinely think it's so meaningless and it's so trivial and it doesn't mean anything important to me now. But basically my life changed after that church camp, and I remember doing really well in school, and I would pray about my exams, and I would pray about the things that were bringing me anxiety and bringing me fear.
Were you still indulging in things of the world?
No.
I had straight after camp. You're just like
no. I stopped going to parties. I stopped getting drunk. I stopped playing with fire. Definitely still struggled with sin and temptation, but was
that straight after the camp?
Yeah, straight up after the camp. I was no longer. Yeah, wow. I also had a bad mouth in school that changed. I didn't want to. They were the things I could easily control. Don't go to the party. Don't drink this drink. Don't smoke this. And so I felt, things changed quickly, and my grades flipped, and I started working really hard and studying really hard, and I'll also say this to anyone who's in school: I never stopped going to church. Like I was at church the day before an exam. I was at church, that was always a priority. I wouldn't always stay and hang out for the whole day, but I would always go to church on Sundays and give God that day of my week. But since then, it has absolutely been a whirlwind journey. And that was I feel the very start of my adventure with God. I was saying this to Jesse yesterday, my cousin, how I feel the Christian life is such an adventure. Do you feel that?
Yeah, for sure, yeah.
It isn't easy, and you go through so much, but you don't go through it alone. And it's such a beautiful life that we get to soar above our circumstances. So it's definitely been a journey, and I'm still got a very long way to go. Yeah. And I think of myself, what does the Apostle Paul say in Philippians? He says something along the lines of, I want to know Christ. And he talks about how I haven't already attained it, but he's on his journey to knowing Christ more. He wants to know him more. So that's sort of where I'm at now. But that's really where I felt that's where I feel God actually saved me. Because though I had done lots of Christian things, I never gave my life over to God. So yeah, that's basically how it all started.
That's so cool. Was there, so you I'm going to say this, testimonies doesn't mean when you came to know Christ.
Correct.
But I will ask you, was there a time in life where you did come to know Christ? Was there a specific day? I was surprised. So most of the podcasts so far, I think maybe only mine and Bobby's
know a day.
Which is I thought most people knew a day and some people didn't.
I do not know a day. If I was to say a day, I would not say a Sunday school day. I would not say an early high school day. It would have been that camp where I hadn't just prayed a prayer. This is the difference between fan or followers is a fan will make a decision, a follower will make a commitment. Yeah. And there is a difference between those two things because praying a prayer, it's great. And often people start their commitment with that prayer. But a prayer does not save you. A decision like today, like I've got to be careful with how I say this, but it's a commitment to Christ, and Jesus says, whoever wants to be my disciple must take up their cross and follow me. So it does cost you something.
If you decide like, oh yeah, believe in Jesus and by your life,
because it's sold in church. We sell salvation as if it's the best thing, and we talk so much about the perks of it. We say, Jesus is your ticket to heaven, right? And life is going to be so good if you make a decision to follow Christ. What we don't talk is that there's a price you have to pay to follow Christ. And so it is going to cost you your, go ahead.
I'm going to, I know what you're saying, but I'm going to say it's not a price that we have to pay. It's a price that we should want to pay. Because it's, I don't know, like the whole Christianity, the reason why we do good things and whatever, like good things, but is because we love God and that's what he tells us to do.
Yeah. I know what you're saying. It's not a works-based thing, 100%. Yeah. But it's not about what can I give God. It's what can I give up for God. Yeah. Like that's my point is like the conversation that Jesus had with, for example, the rich man. And I'm maybe conflating stories here, but I don't know. He has a conversation with Jesus and he says, what does he say? The rich man, when he says, like, what must I do? I don't know, something along the lines of, like, it might have been
where he says the rich man is, it's more likely for a camel to go in the eye of a needle.
Well, he says to the rich man, like, sell everything you have and give it to the poor, and then you will have treasure in heaven, right? Because that was the one thing that he lacked, which was the most precious thing to him. And it's like, oh Lord, I will follow you, but I won't give
my all.
I won't give the most precious thing to me. So
that correlates a lot with what the sermon today.
It does.
It's all about Jesus.
It is all about Jesus.
Even the song that we sung last.
Yes.
There was a line in it. Oh, nothing else matters.
Yes.
Nothing else matters.
Yep.
And whenever I hear that story, like of the rich man, like it hits hard because I always start thinking like, what is something that I can't give up? And it's tough. Like even
could I ask you what one of those things would be?
That's the thing. Like let's look at Abraham, Isaac. I always think about this, and I said this to Fadi and Bashar. I was like, man, Abraham, like he had to offer up his son. That's wild. I'm like, I looked at the boys. I was like, I don't know if I could offer you guys up. Like you're not my son, but like I don't think I have. Like if God asked me to offer you up, I would struggle a lot. I'm like, Abraham had to offer his son. So there's things like maybe like that's an issue. Family, like that's the next level. Other things, I'm not too sure. If there was something that I want God to reveal it to me, but I think friends and family are massive. Maybe it is my comfortability. I'm not too sure, but it is like, the fact that he gave his son, I can't give like just a friend that I've known for a year. Like that's tough. I would give myself, the weird thing is I would give myself up, but I would give like, it's,
I feel that. I understand that.
Do you have an answer to your question?
I definitely feel, what was the question I asked you?
Is there
something that
you feel like you can't give up? It's a bit,
So I would definitely say that even this year I have had to give up. There's been two things, and I won't share exactly what those two things are, but there has been two things that I've had to give up, which were really precious to me. And I didn't realize that maybe they had become idols very slowly in my life. And this is the thing, and I've been having conversations about idolatry with my friends, and how what we don't realize, because we think idols are like, we usually think of idols as evil, terrible things. Like idols are often good things, especially for churched people who are there every Sunday, who are busy in ministry. Like even ministry can become an idol. Do you know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
So
That has happened to me.
yeah. So often we find comfort in our idols. And when we're going through something, or when we're going, it might even just be an emotional thing. Like we might be lacking some self-worth, or we might be feeling insecure about our future, or we might be feeling insecure about our talents or what we're good at. And we'll turn to an idol for a bit of comfort. And I didn't recognize, because in my mind they were good things, and they weren't obviously causing me to sin. They weren't causing me to sin in an overt way.
But your mind would always be on that, like that.
But it was like every time I thought about giving these things up, it was, I don't know how to describe it. It was just something I couldn't really fathom or really understand. That why would God want me to give these things up? Like God gave these things to me. So yeah, they were good things. And so God really patiently and graciously showed me that I was wanting these things from God more than I was wanting God. And so I had to painfully give them over to him. And it was a very ugly process. And there's been so much relief since then, because I actually feel free now, and I haven't felt free for a while in terms of, I don't know, just joy. And when I talk about life being an adventure, like you wouldn't get that analogy from me a year ago. So I think, yeah, the idols are often not obvious. And like we think about God's people in the Old Testament, how Moses is on a mountain, like literally having a conversation with God himself, receiving the law. Like he would have, like the tablets that God wrote with his own hand, the 10 Commandments. While Moses is on this mountain, God's people are literally putting their jewelry together and creating a golden calf, a beautiful, shiny golden calf. And then I just can't imagine them like bowing down and prostrating towards this shiny object that they had made. And it just seems so wrong. And obviously Moses comes down from the mountain and he sees them bowing down to this golden calf that they made, and he's furious. And he broke the beautiful tablets with his own hands because he was just so righteously angry at his people for turning to idol worship and for not having the patience to wait on God. And then we obviously know the rest of the story. But yes, idols can be beautiful, and we often think idols, we don't realize, because we've deceived ourselves into thinking this is a good thing. Like so as an example, I used to think of my job as such a blessing from God, and God gave me this job. Why would he take it from me? Like that was unthinkable to me. And so I was putting so much pressure to succeed in this job, and I never was. I just couldn't, as much as I was straining and striving to do well in this, or it just wasn't possible. And I felt I kept failing God, and I kept failing myself, and I kept failing people in my workplace. So, I think we all probably need to ask God, are there any idols in my life? And there might not be idols in your life. I think when I ask you, you're saying, I don't know, maybe I'm idolizing my family. Like you may not have one. But I think
there are definitely periods where I have idolized something. Might not show it or share what they are, but there are times where like something comes up and I'll be going to God, whatever. But the thing that is constantly on my mind more than anything is that situation or that thing. And it's because I've put that thing in such a high position in priorities in life. That's just the only thing that's on my mind. and sometimes that will happen where there is something going on and it's going to be on your mind. That's more than okay. But the things we got to cast our anxieties on God. So with that situation or with that thing, be like, God is far greater than that. Like this thing is literal trash compared to this. And I think we have to look at that for everything. And something that happened to you, and probably why Jesus said it to the rich man, is that you said you feel so free now after it all happened. And I think it's so tough for us for, let's say we have this job that is in such like a high regard.
That was the most trivial idol I could have given you. It's the most like, who idolizes their job? But just for the sake of being wise with what I share, that's what I gave. But we'll go with it.
We'll go.
Yes.
Say my job, I idolize it so much. Like this is the greatest thing that's ever happened to me. Whatever. And God is like, and then we feel like God wants to take it away from us. It's like, why? But God, this is something from you. The rich man might have been thinking like, God, like all this money is because you've given it to me. But then he takes it away. And like he asks you to remove it or whatever it is.
And like when we think about, because sometimes this is why it's important that we identify this thing, which might be good as an idol. If we had idols, like physical idols in our home, would we just leave them there? And I've been hearing of.
Sometimes we do.
Well, it's a good point.
Computers, TVs.
Yeah, it's true. But like I was like a very stark contrast to what we might idolize is people who have actually left New Age spiritualities, right? So I've been watching testimonies of people who come from like crystals and tarot cards and all that sort of stuff, who are very, very like entrenched in New Age spirituality. And God opened their eyes that this was all demonic stuff and this is not true, real light. And what did they do with all of these objects that they had in their home, the crystals and the cards? Did they sell them for profit to the next person so that they can have these demonic encounters? They went and to the middle of nowhere and buried those things so that no one else would make use of them. And that's the extreme, like that's how extreme we should be with our idols. And let me finish, because it's like, oh no, but should I really leave, I don't know, this job, or should I really, I just got to watch my mouth today, but it's, how extreme do I need to be? But what did Jesus say? Like Jesus said, if your hand causes you to stumble,
chop it off,
cut it off. If your eye causes you to sin, gouge it out. Like that is such an does Jesus actually mean physically gouge your eyeball out? No, because like in terms of lust, even a blind man can lust, right? But that is how extreme we should be dealing with our sin and with idol worship in our life.
Can I say something?
Yeah, go ahead.
Just on that point, something a bit funny. Last year I had these conversations with people from church, and I was like, no, I think he's being literal. Everyone's like, what do you mean he's being literal? And I was like, that's like the saying is
about this passage.
Yeah, about this passage. Okay. He says, if your hand causes you to stumble or whatever it is, chop it off. If your eye causes you to sin, pluck it out, gouge it out. And I was like, look, I think he's being fully legit. The only thing is my hand doesn't cause me to stumble. Like if my hand's not there, I mean, like I can chop my hand, but I can still find other ways to probably do the exact same thing. My eyes, I have a whole imagination that is unfortunately a bit too wild. Like if I could pluck out my imagination or that part of my imagination,
you just cut your own brain out.
Like he's being like the seriousness of sin is that, where like if my hand does cause me to sin, and if it's like a cancer. If there's cancer in your body, you're going to chop it off because to save the rest of your body. That's the seriousness. Sorry, I'll just...
And so like you might say, like going back to crystals, which is a very easy thing to explain this concept. Like if God showed you that crystals, it is an inanimate object that you might have in your home. God created it. Like it is a beautiful looking crystal. But once upon a time, you were relying on that crystal for good fortune, right? This is
like a positive thing for you.
Yeah, but it's a spiritual thing, like good fortune. Like if I study with this, or if I put it in my, like pocket when I go to an exam or whatever it is, like relying on this for some sort of miracle or like spiritual help means like it's no longer just a beautiful object that God created. It's always going to have those roots in spirituality. And that's why if God opens your eyes to an idol in your life, don't just say, you know what, I'm going to leave it in my home and not carry it around with me into the exam room anymore, or I'm no longer going to think of it as giving good fortune to me. How extreme you should be burying that. You should be burning it. So I think for me, because I haven't viewed certain things as idols, I've always left them in my life to some degree. And the roots grew deep. Yeah. And I would turn to those idols in moments of weakness, in moments of insecurity, and I would get comfort in them in those moments. But my insecurity over time just deepened and deepened and deepened. And I felt I actually had to cut it off. I had to delete. I had to actually remove it from the root with God's help. Like it was a very scary thing to imagine myself doing this, but that's how extreme we should be dealing with it in our lives.
And dealing with it, so this was the point I was trying to make earlier. We just keep going tangent, but you said you felt so free. It was probably, I don't know, very tough for you from what you're saying. Maybe one of the toughest things that you've had to do. And with the rich man, probably the toughest thing he had to do with all of his money is sell all of his possessions, give it to the poor. Like, okay, that's a lot you're asking God. The thing is, God knows exactly what we need. He has exactly what we need. So him asking you to give up maybe what he's given you or whatever, what you feel like he's given you, he knows what's in store for you after that.
He does.
Is so much greater.
You know what I love? The image of Jesus and the little girl with the teddy bear. And you've got Jesus and he's looking down at this little girl who doesn't want to give this little teddy bear to Jesus. But she can't see that behind Jesus' back, he's holding He's
holding a whale.
Yeah, he's holding the whale.
If you don't have video, Tamara bought a whale. And it's very cute. So thank Tamara. But yes.
And something Bobby said to me, which I love. This is Bobby's testimony. Is he says, the more you give up for God, I don't know. I'm going to butcher this quote, but the more you give up for God, the more He gives of Himself to you. Like God has given everything to us, but it's like there's no room for us to accept that when we've already got 80% of our heart occupied. Do you know what I'm saying? And you know what? The other scripture that comes to mind is the greatest commandment, which is to love God with our whole heart, with all of our affections and our emotions, with our minds, with our thoughts, with our intellect, with our whole soul, like everything that we are, and with our strength, all of our abilities and giftings and unique things that God has given to us, our energy. And what I didn't realize is that my thoughts were being consumed by things that were not God. My heart was being consumed by things that were not God. They were being consumed by idols in my life. And I had, for such a long time, I hadn't identified a lot of these things as idols. But you know something is an idol if it is the first thing that you think about in the morning, and it's the last thing that you think about, or the last thing that you scroll through before you go to sleep. That is absolutely, unquestionably an idol. And It is.
I think like 95% of us
Yeah.
probably have the same idol with our phones and, and stuff. Like
100%.
Yeah,
But I think it goes beyond having a phone. I think it's often what we're doing on our phone.
Yeah.
That.
Oh no, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So yeah, they're just recent lessons I feel God has sort of been teaching me, and by no means have I fully arrived at where I need to be. And this is something, you know, when you ask me like, how is life now? I'd say like, praise God. God is good. And I feel that I have this real peace that I am where God wants me today, but I'm not where God wants me tomorrow, because God wants me to be more godly tomorrow. God wants me to be more like Christ tomorrow. He wants me to grow more than in terms of how much I love him tomorrow. So that's the peace that we can have as believers. It is not possible to have that peace with, I'm going to say it, with idols. And those idols, it could be something, it could be a job. Like, I'm not discounting that might be a reality for Christians out there, but I think a lot of the time we idolize our future and we idolize relationships and we idolize marriage and we idolize, it could be friendships even, or it could be
sports, could be
sports. It could be money. Like there's a whole plethora of things that
I think money's probably a very big one.
Money definitely a lot more with men, I feel. You've got a lot of young, ambitious boys wanting to just make a whole lot of money in this world. It's like, I just don't like, no, I get it. When I was younger, I definitely had that in my heart, but I'm like, money doesn't make me happy. Like, it actually doesn't. Like, I'm happiest. Like, I feel like, I don't know. I'm a simple person. Like like people make me happy. Church makes me happy. Family makes me happy. Material things like traveling the world, like, yes, that's great. And that's a privilege and a blessing, but is it going to actually make me happy? Like, no. Being with, you know what I'm saying? So, yeah.
Like recently I've come to terms of like, I'm never going to be rich. Like I never had the like desire to be rich. I couldn't care less. But I've come to terms recently. I'm like, I'm not going to have a lot of money because the way I think that God is like sending me, like there's no money involved.
Yep.
So I have to like, for my future wife, I set a disclaimer now.
Yes. May God send you a faithful woman who is going to support you through that.
Yeah.
But you know what? When you think about our God, like the God that we love and the God that we worship, he specializes in riches. He has created heaven, like, you know, like, and the Bible actually says in Ephesians that we have been blessed with every spiritual blessing. And if you read Ephesians, it talks a lot about riches and blessings and prosperity in that sense, but in the spiritual sense. And so God has created eternity for us to enjoy riches and the fullness of joy and the fullness of like prosperity, right?
I think there's a verse in Colossians where it talks about like us having an inheritance with
an inheritance. You know, it's a guaranteed inheritance. Like, we're sealed with the Spirit, guaranteeing our eternal inheritance. But then you think also about how lowly our God is, and he doesn't just specialize in riches, and he's not just so far away from the earth that he created, but he's actually so lowly.
Yeah.
And then you think about Philippians 2 and how Christ left glory in heaven and not only took on the form of a human, but also took on the form of a servant. And not only that, but he became obedient to death, and not just any death, but the death on a cross, the most humiliating, embarrassing, painful death. Yes, we've got Jonah's tattoo on full display.
Yeah.
So God, he is the absolute, there's no one richer than God. And there's no one, no, maybe I can't say this, but God knows, God's heart is actually for the poor, right? So I think, you know, I thank God I feel, I struggle with many things, but greed isn't one of the top 10 things. Money genuinely just doesn't make me happy the way that other things make me happy. And that means that I'm more likely to be led astray by people than by other things. So,
I think it's cool to have different perspectives, because someone probably will be struggling with the love of money. Like, it's not a sin to be wealthy, but to have the love of money, like idolize money, is the root of all evil.
The root of all evil.
But for someone, they wouldn't have the same struggles as us. Like, they will struggle with, let's say, love of money.
Yep.
We struggle with other things. We struggle
100%.
with pride. We struggle with
Totally.
And they might not struggle with that. I think, if you are like, we're not trying to, what's the word? Like, disregard your struggles.
No, definitely not. Like, I know greed is a real thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I probably spoke a little bit arrogantly about it, but
that's okay.
100%. We all struggle in different ways, and
it doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't even have to be necessarily about greed, because it could be like, oh, I'm just trying to provide for my family, just trying to I've just noticed it's definitely a trend with like younger boys wanting to, it's this ambition that we all sort of maybe have a little bit of as men, of I want to provide, and I want to, I don't know, some people are like business minded. I want to have a business, and I want to do this, and I want to buy property, and then I want to invest in X, Y, and Z. And it's this, it's also become more of a cultural thing with all of these different things that you can invest in as well. That is definitely something, like, even for me, I want to provide for my family. Doesn't necessarily mean with like a big house and all that stuff. Like, it could just be with, like, I'm providing them with everything I have. And God will provide me with what I need. God's not going to leave me out for dust, because God cares for me. He loves me, and He will teach me how to provide for my family when I have a family.
100%.
If I have a family.
Totally. One thing I thought was really cool, a conversation we had, Jonah, a couple of weeks ago, was about imposter syndrome. I know you low-key got into it with Sarah, but I feel like you didn't get as deep as we did.
Before we get into it, let's take the Polaroid now.
Oh, now?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do it.
So, like, because it takes some time to ready.
Oh, okay, all right. Okay. Let's do the Polaroid.
Because you said you didn't want to go for an hour and a half, an hour and 15.
Okay, all right.
I told you it goes fast.
It does.
Okay. If you're on audio, I need to be more mindful of the people that are just listening to audio, because sometimes I do hand actions.
Okay, maybe we can do some like background elevator music.
Elevator music.
Which
button? Do you want flash on or off?
Yeah, flash. Button. I like flash.
All right. Red button at the top. You take it.
Red button. That's the photo. Yeah. Is the flash on?
Let me see. Turn around. Yeah, flash is on.
All right, dope. All right, I'm just.
Do you want me to do anything? Just sit here.
I'm gonna do it like Bobby, where my neck is gonna be poking through.
Okay.
All right.
Your long neck. Let's move this microphone.
All right, 1, 2. Huh?
Do you press it?
Great.
All right.
What do I do with it, jokes? I'm gonna take it.
Take that out.
Yo. Okay.
Secret cupboard. You can see all the guitars.
More?
Sorry, all the board games are in there.
I love that.
So funny you say that about imposter syndrome.
Maybe I feel like not everyone knows what it is. Can you define what imposter syndrome is?
So first, I did. We do speak it about as well.
God jokes. You've already spoken about this.
We don't. We briefly, me and Fadi spoke.
About it. Okay, all right.
The funny thing is, I used the text messages that we sent to each other.
Oh, really? Okay, then you know what?
I didn't say, no, we'll talk about it, because we didn't go that deep.
Okay.
But I didn't use your name while reading it, because I was like, I don't know if he wants it.
Well, now you know.
Now you know. But yeah, it was honestly like, I don't know, those messages, I don't know why it hit me so hard. Even like, they were weird, because some of the messages that I was sending was hitting hard. I was like, bro, I didn't know this. I'm just coming up with it now. Yeah, it's wild. Let's talk about it. It's very good, and I think a lot of people will be struggling with it.
Well, how would you define imposter syndrome?
Imposter syndrome. So you gave a term to it.
Did I?
like because I never called it imposter syndrome, but then you're like, yeah, that's imposter syndrome.
I identified it. I diagnosed you. So you want me to define it?
Yeah.
Okay, so I would say imposter syndrome is... I actually struggle to define this. Honestly, Google it. My lousy definition would be that imposter syndrome is a situation where you feel you are a fraud and that people are... I don't know. You're a fraud and people think that you are...
something you're not.
Like you are when people... I don't know.
No. I think that
I'm going to Google it right now.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes.
But it's you thinking that other people think that you are something that you're not.
Yes.
That's a bit confusing.
Okay. Let's see what Google says. Imposter syndrome is the condition of feeling anxious and not experiencing success internally, despite being high-performing in external objective ways. This condition often results in people feeling like a fraud or a phony and doubting their abilities.
Yeah.
Interesting. But I think this is a real thing in the Christian life.
Oh, yeah, massively.
Where we're such encouraging people and people always have really beautiful hearts and they just want to encourage you and say nice things to you. And as someone who has definitely struggled with imposter syndrome, like now I feel I'm in a different place to... I was in a difficult sort of job before and it was, a big thing consuming me at the time. But you go to church and people see you like I'm in a very public ministry. Like I'm always on stage and people make assumptions about that. The fact that I'm just such a godly, spiritual person when I might be knees deep in sin that people don't see in front of them. So, and it can manifest in your job. It could be in your relationship. It could be in friendships or other scenarios where people think you're, I don't know, you're something that you're not essentially. But yeah, I mean,
it's I think this. So the context was. I mean, I shared it in the Sarah podcast was the wedding thing. I told him the story weeks ago. And he just said, you're like, yeah, that's imposter syndrome. I was like, what on earth is imposter syndrome? And then we started talking about, I started talking about our old self and our new self. This isn't a Christian setting. Maybe it doesn't work in other settings. But we're promised, or we're told to die to our old self, meaning the person we were before we knew Christ, the worldly, the full of sin person. We're told to each day die to that person. That person has to be long gone, buried, buried like the idols and all that stuff. And we are now our new self because we died to our old self. So our new self is refined. It's new. It's who God calls us to be. I was saying there are times where our old self, we dip into that. We sort of become our old self, and that's when we feel an imposter when we're our new self, but we're actually being an imposter when we're our old self.
Yes,
because that's not who we're called to be.
Yes, but that's not who we are. Yes. It's not just who we're called to be. God has made us new.
Yes.
God has given us a brand new identity. And our new identity, it's so incredibly difficult to believe that I am holy somehow. God has made me holy. Like I'm literally, when God looks at me, he doesn't see me and all of my shortcomings and failures and sins and mistakes and guilt and shame. He actually sees Christ. And he sees the perfection and the righteousness and the holiness of Christ when he looks at me. So I feel like such a fraud when I think about, instead of being like filled with wonder and amazement and just praise and thanks to God, I'm stuck in this imposter syndrome where I'm like, no, that's not true. And it's actually, now that I think about it, it's rooted in doubt and unbelief. If I actually believed who God says I am, well, you're right. The imposter is the old man, and the real me, like the real Stephen, the real Jonah, the real you is that you are a new creation. You are who God says you are. You are a child of God. You are free from condemnation. You are eternally secure. All of the things that God says about you in his word are the truest things. Like, is there anything more true than God's word? Is what I think of you true? Is what other people think of you true? Is what you think of you true? What people who don't like you think about you, or what people who love you think about you. What God thinks of you is that is the most important opinion. Yeah. That is the most important, truest thing that identifies us. So, yeah.
But to think, like, because we were this, like, I'm gonna say pretty brutal, but we were this pathetic, like, just piece of trash,
useless.
Useless. We had no worth, undeserving, all these things. I mean, we're still undeserving, but worthless, like, just useless. And then God made us into something refined, and we're still getting refined. We're reaching perfection. Like, he sees us as like I don't know. It's wild. Like,
it is wild. It's hard to believe, but that's why children have a easier, time believing these things, because they're simple-minded, and adults are so complicated, and we need to make things
because we've done worse. We feel like, oh, there's no way he loves me. But he does. He loves the worst of the worst, which
true.
is all of us.
It's very true.
I had something cooking in my brain, but I can't remember.
But it's gone?
It's gone.
That's happened like 5 times.
What was I saying? This happens too much.
There was one other thing, if I keep going, that I was gonna.
If I remember, I'll bring it back.
Bring it up. But I was having a really interesting conversation with my cousin yesterday about. It's sort of like self-worth and how we view ourselves, and what does a healthy view of yourself look like? Because what does Jesus say as like the second most important commandment? He says, love your neighbor as you love yourself. And obviously you've got that false humility of people think, oh, no, I'm the worst. And it's,
that's me.
You know what I'm saying? It is you. No, I'm joking. But I'm not joking. No, it's fine. But like, let's be honest. Also, like the Apostle Paul said, I am the chief of sinners. Like I'm the worst of the worst. But I'm just curious to know what you think about that, Jonah. Like, how do you feel? What is a balanced, godly view on how should we view ourselves?
Okay, so
or let me change this differently. What does it mean to love yourself?
Oof. Okay, so I'm gonna give a backstory. 2020 again. Word of Life. It was in Port Macquarie.
Yo, shout out to Word of Life.
we had a psychologist come up.
Okay.
She ran like a seminar, I don't know, and it was one thing that I was struggling at this time. Maybe it was imposter syndrome, whatever it was. I can't remember the specifics, but one thing she said, she brought that up. The second commandment. Love your neighbor as yourself. And she says as yourself. That means you need to love yourself. Loving your neighbor as yourself is like, will you really truly be able to love your neighbor if you don't love yourself? That's tough, and that hit me hard, because I'm like, man, I don't feel like I love myself. I'm so self-pitiful. Just like
critical.
Yeah,
criticize. Like, it's this constant dialogue that I've struggled with in my mind of just you're just always making mistakes and you're always doing the wrong, and you're never doing good enough for yourself or for God, or for other people. That's the thinking that I've sort of struggled with.
Yeah. And this is going to sound a bit weird, but something that helps me is that, let's say, like, I love you a lot. I can see my sins to like I know the sins that I've done. I know how disgusting I'm, pathetic I am. I don't love myself. Like, this is gonna sound again messed up, but let's say I don't love myself as I love you, but you've actually probably done the same things that I have done. So like, why can I love you and not myself? I mean, it's because I'm ignorant to what you've done, and like, if you've done all the sins in front of me, then maybe it's a different story. There's one thing. The main thing is that God loves me. If he has found worth in me, he's found the use in me. Like, that alone, like, I need to love myself because God loves me. He shows me that I am worth something. Again, I'm not deserved of the worth. I'm not deserved to be used by him, but he still uses me. He still gives me worth. And I mean, now I have a calling, I have meaning, I have, like, I was speaking to a friend from work, non-believer, and I said to him, like, we were just having a conversation, and I was like, like, I have the meaning of life. And he's like, what do you mean? I was like, for me, it's just to serve God with everything I have, with everything I do, serve God. And then I asked him, what, do you have a meaning of life? And he's like, no.
Wow.
That broke my heart, because that's what I've been saved from. Like, this whole life that I'm living now, like, I have meaning. If it wasn't for God, what he did for me, there is no meaning. Like, imagine living on this earth, just existing, not having worth, not having meaning, not having use. Like, I mean, that's not why we do things, but like, that is such a blessing that we have from God, because he loved us that much. I'm sure I can love myself a little bit more than I do.
Can I even ask a little bit more of a personal question now? What do you love about yourself?
That's a tough one. See, I could talk about all the bad things about him.
No. I want to hear what you love about yourself.
I think it's what God's given me.
Or
okay.
Can I ask, what do you think you're good at? Maybe put it that way. What do you think God has given you in terms of abilities that God has that you think you're good at?
Okay. Again, every time you ask a question, I have like backstory to my. I'll give a little backstory. I have always said I don't have any natural talents, and I still believe it. Just hear me out, because I don't have talents in playing instruments. Even the football talents that I have, it wasn't natural talent. It was stuff that I had to work on. Like,
okay.
This is my thought process. Natural talents, but to be honest, I don't need them. God has given me the ability to serve with everything I have, even if I'm not the best at it. I mean, I screw up a lot on AV, but I mean, God still allows me to serve in AV with the youth. But can I say, I've been so blessed. Like, at youth, one of the youth members, if you're watching, I appreciate you. I've known him like probably for like 2 months now, but I've only been speaking to him for a few weeks. Oh man, this is gonna get me emotional.
Oof, okay.
Literally on Friday, like I was telling him about my testimony a little bit, and then he shared, and then I asked, like, when like, tell me about yours, and he's like, no, I said I was 8. He asked me, how old were you when you were saved? I said I was 8. And he's like, oh, you'll double my age. I was like, and then I saw, like, oh, really? Okay. I mean, no, you're half my age. Sorry.
Half my age, yeah. Okay.
And I was like, that sort of just, and then I went back to him, I was like, wait, you were 16. How old are you now? Like 16. I was like, oh, so it happened recently. And he's like, yeah, and I think it's because of you. And I was like, what? I was like, bro, I haven't, like, in my head, I haven't done anything. Like, genuinely, like,
wow.
bro, it was, and something, oh man, sorry. Honestly, the biggest blessing I could ask for if you watch the first podcast, one of the goals for this year is to be evangelistic and have evangelism, like be better. And even though I haven't been better in evangelism, even the small impact that I had, like what I thought was small, was a massive impact on someone's life. Like stuff like that. I know I haven't really answered your question because I can't really put words to it, but like just God using me with just, I guess, being diligent in serving, I think is, so I've looked at my spiritual gifts, I think serving and giving and possibly leading. Three.
Good.
And it's funny because giving was part of his, like, so pretty much I had it on my heart to get him a Bible. So I went to the youth leaders, asked, like, should I get him a Bible? And then someone got him a Bible, like, because they were like, nah, like, let's get it together. Then someone's like, I'll just get it. And I was like, okay. But he knew it was from me, technically. Yeah, and like, so God used my giving gift in my serving gift to impact someone's life. And I was like, so I think I don't really answer your question, but
no, but you did because you're aware of the thing, like when you mentioned leadership and you mentioned servant or service. Those are like giftings from God, and I think I've got a select few of people in my life who I go, you guys are the servants. Like, you guys have servant hearts, not in a derogatory way, but in a seriously in a way of I honor you, like how natural it is. And I was saying this to one of my friends, like, you will see a need before it even comes up, and before it comes up, you will go and get ready to meet that need. And that's what a real servant heart is. I don't have that, and my heart is not that big. And so I think the reason I asked the question is because it feels a little bit taboo to love yourself, because we're just so cautious of being proud people. And we definitely need, and we all struggle with humility, and that's such an important thing. And Jesus obviously modeled that so perfectly. Yeah. And he says, blessed are the poor in spirit, blessed are the meek. And so it is important that we balance that, but we obviously don't want to have that false humility of thinking, Lord, I'm not good at anything. Like, how could you insult God? God has made you uniquely. God has made you wonderfully. He's put a lot of thought and like precision into how he has molded you. You are not like the next person. And I think it's important that we know what makes us unique, and we know, and it's a journey, like learning what God has blessed you with. But I think for me, it's sort of helped me understand. It's helped me have a healthy view of myself, not thinking that I'm greater than I am, but just love, like, Lord, like, this is how I feel. Like, Lord, I love how you've made me. You have made me differently. Yeah, wow. And I don't have the same servant heart that you do. But I think, Lord, you've given me a really, like a deep mind, and I think about things very deeply. And I love, when it comes to reading your word, what you show me, and for me, like that's such a humbling thing. It's not something that makes me like, no, this came from you, God. So how could I boast about it? And I think sometimes we misuse our gifts in a way where we don't realize our worth. And so when we start using those gifts the way God's intended for them to be used, we actually learn to love ourselves. So I think, yes, we definitely should be humble before God and before each other. And what does it say? Is it Philippians where it says, consider others?
Oh, yeah. My favorite verse.
Can you quote it to me?
Yes. I can quote it to you. So I forgot the first word. Wow, what's the first word?
It's Philippians 2, yeah?
Yeah, Philippians
2
chapter 2, verse 7. Verse 3.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
Look, my brain is saying...
do nothing from selfish ambition.
Or conceit or something. No jokes. Keep going.
Do nothing from selfish ambition, but in humility, count others more significant than yourself.
Count others more significant
That's
than
literally
yourselves.
my favorite words. That's really bad. I mean,
Literally. But yeah,
it might be selfish ambition and conceit.
And vain conceit or something like that. I don't know. I may be
NIV.
conflating 10 different
It's okay.
verses together. But yeah, so obviously and I feel like we preach humility a lot, but it's like loving ourselves as wonderful, unique creations of God that he has designed so specifically. And like the fact that we all have a different fingerprint, how wonderful is that? How incredible is that? Right? But we all have different gifts. And Jonah, you have so many gifts. It's not about do you play an instrument? That is such a cop out.
Said natural talent.
It's such a cop out. But you, like, one of your gifts, which I've already spoken about, is your realness, and you are unafraid to talk about your struggles, which takes a lot of strength. And you clearly you don't fear man the way I fear man, right? And clearly you don't struggle with pride the same way I do. I'm sure you still struggle with pride, but for me, that there's an element of I'm not going to share what really bothers me until I'm past it. That's pride. Because some of my very open, expressive friends, I'll go through life with them, right? But I will often struggle alone because I'm like embarrassed to show people that I'm struggling. So that's one of your superpowers, Jonah, and that's I've had to learn so much from people like you and people like Bobby, and it's a humbling thing. But
I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I just think, if you don't know what you're good at, maybe you should ask God. And if you don't know what makes you unique, because it's funny, God is making every believer into the same image. We are all being conformed to the image of Christ. But in the same way, whilst we are all becoming more Christ-like, that doesn't take away from our uniqueness. And I wish I had some Psalm 139 comes to mind. When you think about how God has created us and how his thoughts are so great and vast, and towards us, like me, like a little ant on this earth in light of the universe that he's created. Like the earth is literally God's footstool. What's the quote we learned at camp? It's God rules the universe with his feet up, because there's a verse in Isaiah chapter 66 verse 1 which says, heaven is my throne and the earth is my footstool. Right? So God is so incredibly great and mighty, and yet he has put thought into me, and he has so much thoughts towards me. Like he has more thoughts towards me than I have of him.
Every
right?
little intricate detail about
everything.
The way we think,
and what does Jesus say? The very hairs of your head are numbered. Yeah. So you are special. I am special. We have differences in terms of what God has gifted us with. But when we start to learn those quirks and differences, like it brings out praise in our life, and it brings out humility, and it's Lord, thank you for making me this way. I love that you have made me so intentionally, and you have designed me so wonderfully. And I pray that I would use that in a way that glorifies you, because we'll use our gifts for things we want, but that's not why God has designed us with these gifts. Like we use gifts to get, pretty much to get what we want. But when we use it in the kingdom, and this is what I feel like I've been out of the kingdom for so long, but I'm just starting to get back into it, like in terms of the real important ministry. Worship is important, don't get me wrong, but I think discipleship is so much more important, and building people up in the faith. And worship does do that in a way. Yeah. But discipleship, when I get to use my experiences and the unique things about me to build other young men up in the faith, I feel like I have a greater, it's not like I love myself even more, but I have a greater appreciation for how God has made me. But I didn't see that when I wasn't using the gifts for the kingdom, when I was using the gifts in selfish ways, I actually had a very poor self-image, and people weren't appreciating the gifts that, that I wanted them to. Do you know what I'm saying? So God's designed it for a purpose, and that purpose is to serve Him and not yourself.
That's, bro. You're spitting fire, bro. Okay, so I'm gonna unpack because there was a lot there, but there was a lot that hit hard. Firstly, I always say, if you've had a conversation like about this, like pride to me recently, I say this. I say, I'm the most self-deprecating person, but I'm the most prideful person.
Oof.
Like one day I'll be like, Jonah, you're the worst. You can't do anything. And the next, like, Jonah, you are the best. But they're both complete lies.
Yeah.
Obviously, I don't think I'm the best, but they're both complete lies. It's funny how we do that because we try and be humble, like self-deprecating, but we are being the opposite of humble. But something that you said that is so cool, it's how I'm going to add to it, is when we actually understand who we are, the gifts that we've have, like love ourselves, that's actually more humble because like we appreciate God so much more. And like God, again, from what I was, undeserving, unworthy, like worthless, all these things, to what you have made me to be, bro. Like, yeah, it's insane. And I always say, like, God uses me at my worst, my lowest. How much more can He use me at my best when I am actually like taking these things, not just throwing them away and be like, I'm trash, and looking at all the negatives, because there are a lot of negatives. Let's be honest. But why am I not looking at what God has given to me, the positives, the gifts? Like, sure, I can't, like, I'm not very good at evangelizing, and that's good, something that I can work on, and I will sort of focus on it. But I mean, I can still use the things that God has given to me. And Mum said that to me because I shared the youth thing with her on Friday, and she's like, Jonah, you say you want to work on evangelizing, that's good. But God's using you without even evangelizing, like without you improving your evangelism and without you even talking. And she's like, she reassured me. I still, the camera died again somehow. I still want to get better at evangelizing because I think we're all called to it. But I guess, thank you for that, bro. It's good to understand our worth now. Understanding what our worth before, understanding our worth now. Seeing what God has pulled us from, what God has made us into, the work that He's put into us. Like, that's crazy. Like, genuinely.
And
crazy.
what does Ephesians say? Like, Paul says that we are God's handiwork. We are His workmanship, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which He prepared in advance for us to do. So the fact that I am God's workmanship, I'm His handiwork, like I am a vessel for God, like that is incredible. That is mind blowing. Yeah.
Well, look, 1 hour and 45 minutes. I said to Steve, he said, let's go an hour to an hour and a half. And I was like, Stephen, an hour goes so quick. And he's like, no, it won't. Sorry, an hour and 45. So
it's been good.
Do you have anything else that you want to look, I can continue, but we'll stop it here.
I think we should let's do a part 2. Invite me again.
Of course. You'll see Stephen probably like 10 more times. But
should we have a vote? Like, I don't know, maybe people should vote. Like,
what? Like, who's their favorite?
No, just like, should we have Stephen back? No, I'm joking. Let's not.
I don't know if you can do that actually.
Just do a poll on the gram.
In the gram. Should we have Stephen back? Okay.
I am going to vote no, even though I want to come back. No, it's good. It's fine.
We'll check the Polaroid.
Oh yes.
Okay, I don't think it's fully developed.
I look like a proper worm. Like
not
my
fully
head
developed
is
yet, though.
popping out of an apple. I love. Oh wow, and my eyes are very shut. I like it. No, it's
Wait,
fun. It's a vibe.
They're
It's good.
expensive. I say this to everyone. One shot.
It's
that's all you
it's
get.
like $5.
One
Okay,
shot is what you take.
I'm here for it.
You can sign it. Pick any of these.
Okay.
Up to you, sir.
All right. Do I do that like off camera?
No, do it.
Do it now.
Yeah, then we'll
Okay.
show the camera.
Elevator music. Resume.
No, I'll just waffle while you do it. So while you prepare, are you getting ideas?
I'm trying. Which text is the best one? Is what I'm wondering.
Most people use pink.
We're gonna do pink.
Pink.
We're gonna do pink.
While you get that, I'm going to tell you from now. Think about one thing that you would give advice to everyone that's watching.
Me.
Yeah.
Oh, advice.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you're also you're welcome to do the outro if you like. I'm giving
I
the
will do the
guess.
outro.
Okay. And then yeah. All right. So he's let's see what he's writing. My hair looks like a mushroom top. What's going on there?
It's the mushroom family. Okay.
Let me see. I'll show the camera. It's not fully developed yet, but it is.
I love that there's a line.
your neck, bro.
It's the neck. It's,
Yeah, that was fun. Love you, Jonah. Oh.
Um.
Oh, it's blurry. Oh, there we go. Oh, it's very cute, to be fair.
Mm.
And then it says, oh, you cannot read it, but it says, wait, do you want to read what it says? Because I don't know.
I think I said, "Yo, that was fun," and I said, "Love you, Jonah."
Very nice.
Yeah.
And you can stick it up wherever you like. So you pick where you stick it up.
Okay.
You can do it now if you like.
I think we're gonna be humble and go in the corner.
Humble, not like
It's
everyone
the
else.
humility for me. We're gonna go next to Mads.
Cute.
All right, we're gonna pop that one.
You can hold. All right. If you're an audio listener, there was just random silence and whatnot. But that's fine. Oh, is it not going through?
Oh, it's like
That's a
it's
button.
very short.
No, I think that's just a
Oh.
broken one.
Uh-huh.
There you go.
Doobie
Let's just throw that one out.
But that's short as well.
No, this is good.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, that is longer. Okay. Oh, sorry. I just fixed what you.
Hold it. Very cool.
That was dope. Okay, so my closing words of advice. I would give the advice I would give is, I don't know, we covered a lot of different topics today. I would say if you are someone who isn't sure about your giftings and your uniqueness, or you might just be doubting that, ask God to show that to you. And the other thing I'll say is, if you are struggling with that, ask yourself, what are you using those gifts for? What are you using those things that you may be good at? Are you using it to get things that you want, or are you using those things to edify God and to serve Him and serve His kingdom? I think the only thing I can't help but say is, in terms of advice, is make sure you're in God's word, because that is food for your soul. That is your daily bread. But that, yeah, I mean, like of the topics that we covered, I feel like, yeah, that's my closing advice. In terms of the outro, I just want to say thank you so much for dialing in. And if you've made it this far, you're a real one. And so just please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. And then hit the notification bell for that one. And then
where can they find us? I mean, they're on YouTube or
YouTube, Spotify. What else is there?
Apple Podcast. We even have an Instagram.
Yo, and sorry, the one other thing I'm sorry we didn't. I feel like I should have done a little ASMR moment.
We can do it now. Oh no!
Look, you know what worries me? Like, the only thing I've been insecure about sitting in this chair is like the sounds coming out of my mouth as I speak.
I usually I put filters on it and stuff,
okay,
so it gets really
all right, we like the filter, but just a little. I'm sorry, Simon.
Yes, thank you so much. If anyone is listening, I want you to put, what should I put in the chat? In the chat, in the comments. If they're still listening.
Just give us the what's a cool emoji? I don't know, something different. All right, no, is this too controversial because we spoke about idolatry? I was gonna say give us the evil eye emoji. Maybe not.
Evil eye emoji.
I don't know. We're going to go with the evil eye emoji.
Okay,
put it in there if you listened and you felt convicted about idolatry. Or if you didn't feel convicted by idolatry, just put it in there. If you made it this far, then pop it in there. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Stephen, for
thank you.
on.
That was fun.
Appreciate you. He did miss Instagram and TikTok.
What do you mean I missed it? I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
Yo, TikTok.
TikTok, yeah. To be honest, I've just been doing previews and stuff. I haven't really been doing much else, but hopefully one day. It's just life's busy. Thank you for watching. Again, appreciate you.
Should you end on thank you, friends?
Maybe. I always say peace.
Peace? Peace.
I haven't ended yet.
Over and out.
All right. We will see you next episode, and peace.